can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. And for those that are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss anything. Today's video, we're going to be talking about Invincible Iron Man number 20, written by Jerry Duggan with art by Andrea DeVito and color by Brian Valenza. I didn't do a video for the previous Invincible Iron Man number 19, largely because honestly I forgot it came out. It was one of those that I was like, when this issue came out, I was like, oh man, dude, whatever happened? Like, it's been a while since we had an Invincible Iron Man comic. I feel like, man, we've gone, like, I thought they had forgotten about the book. I knew the book was, gonna, end with issue 20, but I was like, damn, they just decided not to even release them. And come to find out the book came out, it slipped under my radar. I was just way too busy. But all of that was just a really long way to say that I'll probably be talking a little bit about some things that happened in that 19th issue, just, on some small scale or another, because it's kind of hard not to. But just so you know, what has happened to the marriage between Iron Man Tony Stark and the White Queen Emma Frost? Well, for one, nothing, because they weren't married to begin with. And what I mean by that is from a legal standpoint. Tony Stark was not married to Emma Frost, so you can't really have a dissolution of a marriage to Emma Frost proper because she married Tony under an alias, Hazel Kendall. So technically it's his dissolution of his marriage to Hazel Kendall. But I know what people mean when they say Tony Stark and Emma, but I want to make sure we're clear on that. For all intents and purposes, Hazel Kendall's death could be faked and Tony could just be a widow. That's how easy this could be undone. But the point here is She-Hulk has already gotten the ball rolling on the dissolution of the marriage between Tony and Emma, as Hazel. Tony in this issue says that there's something he wants to suss out first. The thing that he's wanting to suss out is probably what you would expect. The fact that this marriage became real to him.
It's still real to me, damn it!
Yes, this was a marriage of convenience, but we saw over the course of the Invincible Iron Man series, they started actually almost kind of slick falling in love with each other. And while Emma Frost won't say it out loud or express it in any way, she feels the same way. It's one of those scenarios where this was the best part of the Invincible Iron Man story, at least from the inception of Tony and Emma's relationship. I feel like Jerry crafted a very strong narrative of these characters. But the thing is, I felt this pairing opened up both of these characters to some very, very good storytelling. It almost kind of became the main event, not the other Krakoan stuff that was going on in the book, which is impressive to say the least. However, the reasonings behind why Emma is parting ways with Tony Stark is because, well, for one, she knows she has something to go do. I think it's safe to say that roughly around this point, she has already been approached by Apocalypse for the shenanigans-filled Heir of Apocalypse miniseries that if you haven't checked it out, I have a video up here talking about the most recent issue of that. And then there's also the notion that Tony has other stuff that he needs to take care of as well. So these two characters, they're parting ways. And I find it very sad because, we saw, some many issues ago where, Tony had saved something on Krakoa for Emma Frost. It's actually a keepsake of hers that was like a scrapbook photo album type of deal from her daughters, the Stepford Cuckoos. And we see that Emma has a parting gift for Tony as well, and it's a check for an undisclosed number of dollars, but we know that at the very least it's billions of dollars. And these billions, and this is important because it's kind of funny how this is all playing out, because over the course of the past few years, we've seen Batman over on the DC comic side of things go broke. Like, he is a broke ass, having to, like, for a while he was having to live in the Batcave. Like, he couldn't even live in the mansion anymore because it had been bought out by Vandal Savage. He was having to go live in an old brownstone somewhere. Tony has had a very similar trajectory, and just like how Batman has recently gotten his money back, so too is Tony. Tony has gotten his money back by way of Emma Frost literally stealing billions of dollars from some of the most unscrupulous people across the Marvel Comics universe. We see characters like Dario Agger of Roxxon, the gangster and Spider-Man villain Tombstone, the Serpent Society, the Police, AIM, various different gangs, and even worse, Dr. Doom. Yeah, there's gonna be a receipt. There's gonna be a receipt for that one. You can best believe that. But yes, all this so she could give it to Tony as a parting gift and help him help his old buddy Rhodey with a personal project. Now, that personal project and, you know, what's been going on with Rhodey, because that's something that I think has not been really discussed a lot. We know that Rhodey busted out of prison back in Invincible Iron Man number 18, but because we didn't cover Invincible Iron Man number 19, one of the things that happened was that when Rhodey got out of jail, he went to the bar with no name, and because of his recent run-ins with characters like Sandman and the Living Laser, this has changed Rhodey's mindset on what constitutes a villain. And even though technically Sandman and Living Laser were only helping Rhodey in prison because they were being paid to do so, it has no less likely helped him understand these people on I would say better level than what you might imagine. Yeah, and this is something that was a plot point from the Christopher Cantwell Iron Man series, as well as something that was talked about very briefly at the very beginning of the Jerry Duggan Invincible Iron Man series, was that Tony and Rhodey had worked very hard to take all of the world's weapons of mass destruction, all the different gadgets and tech and everything that villains across the Marvel Comics universe had brought to light. They've taken all the stuff and locked it away. And Rhodey was one of the only people who had access to this tech because he's one of the only people that Stark trusts. And what he has done is he has taken that very same tech and he has handed it out like party favors at the bar with no name.
1, 2, 3.
Because he is giving them an opportunity to fight back against Orcus, an opportunity that a lot of these people took because Orcus has taken from them. They also want to stick it to the man a little bit. There's a lot of different reasons as to why some characters do want to help or don't want to help, but a lot of them choose to help. Well, I know that issue depicts there's going to be some huge fight between Rhodey and Iron Man. There is no huge fight between Rhodey and Iron Man. The only real conflict is that when Rhodey asks Stark what he had been up to that whole time, and Rhodey was like punches him because he literally sees the paper on the ground where he's out ice skating with Emma Frost. It was something that, you know, we saw happen in your earlier issues of Invincible Iron Man. Now, granted, it's worse because technically, we know Stark was doing stuff. He was working to help Rhodey, but he did pay some squirrels to go around looking like him, and then he literally went and did the same thing they did with Emma Frost after the ruse was off. But still, the point remains, well, yes, he was mad at Tony, and Tony owes him for this because he went to prison, and while he was exonerated and his case was dismissed with extreme prejudice, and the judge is even sitting here apologizing to Rhodey about what happened. The point of the matter is, Rhodey has, because he spent time in prison, he now has a new lease on life and a new line of thinking, one he didn't have before. And I want to remind people, while I know a lot of us tend to think of Rhodey as one particular type of character, the thing that I think people forget about is that you might be misremembering Rhodey from some different iterations of the character. There have been times in Rhodey's life where he's been a little more progressive, but Rhodey is actually quite the conservative when it really comes down to it, especially when it comes to prison reform and criminality and justice. He has a very straight-laced idea of what justice looks like. So the fact that he is changing his opinion here, wanting to give people like the criminals from the bar with no name, characters like Rhino and Stiltman and Sandman, Living Laser, and the fact that he is wanting to give them an opportunity to prove themselves as Avengers, a new type of Avengers team, mind you, which, to be fair, because of the fact he says he's going to the West to, get this all sussed out. Basically, he's going to be recreating the West Coast Avengers. Basically what this is. I'm not saying that that's what the book is going to be called, but for all intents and purposes, it's the West Coast Avengers. They're going to the West Coast. And for those who don't know, Rhodey has a very deep history with the West Coast Avengers. And he is probably one of the best people imaginable to bring the West Coast Avengers to the forefront. So yeah, the fact that Rhodey is wanting to take these people, he's wanting to give them a new lease on life. He's wanting to give them a chance to redeem themselves in the eyes of the public, to let them be heroes. This is actually a pretty big deal, if for no one else but Rhodey. But yes, this team, while it sounds like the West Coast Avengers, it actually sounds like it's going to be more of a mixture of the West Coast Avengers by way of the Thunderbolts, but minus government oversight. This is something that sounds like it's going to be incredibly privatized. We see that Tony is using those billions of dollars that Emma Frost has given to him to create a new base for these new West Coast Avengers, or rather these new not West Coast Avengers. So that part is pretty cool, and seeing that, Rhodey is very likely, I don't know how, far out this may or may not be. It may get announced very quickly now that this book is out, but the idea that Rhodey is going to have a team of his own and leading the West Coast Avengers again, and very likely seeing characters like Sandman and Living Laser on it, I think that is going to be something pretty cool. And there's even maybe potentially the promise of Riri Williams being on the team as well. There's no hard confirmation of it, but there is a little bit of a wrap up with her story, which if I had to say, if there's any one blemish on Jerry Duggan's Invincible Iron Man series, and I want to make sure I preface this, I'm not saying it's a blemish because it's something I feel that he did wrong. It's something that I feel that Jerry Duggan did because he knew no one else would. No one was going to write the story about Ironheart and the 10 Rings, and the only person who was willing to do it seemed to be Jerry Duggan. And I'm gonna go and tell you right now, if Jerry Duggan didn't write it, it would have been forgotten about. This would have been one of those stories that months from now, maybe several months to a year, maybe even 5 years from now, if ever Ironheart ever gets her own series or is featured in a book again, it would be one of those things that would just get hand waved away. That's exactly what would have happened with that 10 Ring story arc. They were not going to, I don't think Marvel was planning on doing anything with it, like, ever. And Jerry took the opportunity to try and do something with it. I don't really like the overall outcome because I feel like it was a little rushed, but at the same time, I get where he was coming from. I just wish that we would have gotten to see that story play out in her own series, or like a book where she is featured prominently. That's what I would have preferred. But it's the one thing about the run that I'm just kind of like, ugh, man, I really wish we wouldn't have done that. But hey, it is what it is. I do appreciate the Riri is, being allowed to ride off into the sunset. She is no longer under the influence of the 10 Rings of Power that once belonged to the Mandarin, and she seems ready to get back on track. And there's even like I said, there's a slight hint that she may be hanging out with Rhodey and Tony over on the West Coast Avengers side of things. So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of hope that, while I appreciate Tony Stark's presence, I hope that if and when that West Coast Avengers whatever book it is comes out, I actually hope Tony's not in it very much. I would rather, because it would be too many iron people on the team is why, mostly. But I would rather it be more about Rhodey and his efforts. And if Riri is there, I think that's fine. But that would be that, like, at that point, you have reached maximum iron people on the book. That's just me. Speaking of people whose story is closed out, we also see a closeout of the story of Fey Long, a character who may also find his way to that West Coast Avengers series, or at least there's some hint of it to some limited extent or another. There's something that Rhodey brings up in this book. He asked what happened to Fey Long. He's actually chosen something that Fey Long probably liked less than getting completely closed down, and that is he has been trapped on the one place that he wanted more than anything else, but mutants took from him. He's been locked away in a prison on Morocco, and this isn't something that's government sanctioned. This isn't something that's been mandated by anyone else. It's all because Tony chose to do this. He has locked him away, and he's basically keeping him locked away until Fey Long decides to confess for the things that he's done, namely the murder of his own parents, as well as all the destruction and murder he has caused throughout the House of X Krakoan era. He's also wanting him to change his ways, to repent. He think if we could actually hear these scenes, I imagine that he probably has Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror playing on repeat in that cell. He's like, oh, you're gonna look in the mirror, you're gonna make a change. You're gonna do it, but you're gonna do it. And it's funny to me too, because Fey Long is such an unapologetic character. I feel like this is a good excuse for why it's gonna take a while to get that out of him. But if we do see him again, I wouldn't be surprised if it's in whatever Rhodey is doing next, because Rhodey had a very vested interest in this, because technically Fey Long is the reason he went to jail. It's also, Tony's fault too for leaving him, but also Fey Long's. And of course, also there's a rehabilitation label tagged on to Fey Long. It would also make his interactions with Rhodey very interesting, because, Rhodey is very ride or die right now. for reforming a lot of these criminals. So it would be even more funny if one of the people he has to help reform is somebody he already doesn't like someone like everybody else. Yeah, he's kind of like whatever. You see, he's working really well with a lot of the criminals from the bar with no name, in that 19th issue. But yeah, Fey Long would be the exception to the rule there. And I find it interesting, because I feel like Fey Long was a lot of wasted potential. I feel like it was a lot of wasted potential because, well, for one, his look alone just made him look more like Bastion. And then, of course, with X-Men 97 coming out and reminding people who Bastion was, made it even worse, especially when you consider that, the trajectory of the character, while it's not exactly the same in the comics, there was some similarity, just kind of reversed a little bit between the Bastion of X-Men 97 and the Fey Long of the Krakoan era. And I feel like Fey Long's position could have just as easily been filled by Bastion, and probably would have been filled better by Bastion. But I get why they didn't use Bastion, because, well, for one, Bastion's technically supposed to be gone. So there's that. I think the longer we wait to see him again, the better. Like, if he doesn't show up in whatever Rhodey is doing next, I'm fine with that. Like, I mean, I would be perfectly okay if Fey Long just took a few years to himself. I would be fine with that. And then some writer come along and do something special with him. That would be cool. Or Jerry Duggan himself come back and do something with him. I'd be fine with that as well. I feel like Fey Long makes for a good Iron Man villain. I don't think he made for a good X-Men villain. I think he made for a much better Iron Man villain. Someone who was on Tony's level. That could actually go toe-to-toe with Tony. I like, honestly, man, with the benefit of hindsight, Fey Long is the type of villain that would have been perfect for the MCU. Like, he'd been a perfect, like, you get the right actor, he would have been the perfect, like, just villain for a Robert Downey Jr. Tony Stark. That would have, yeah. Man, I don't know if that's what Duggan was going for, but I'd co-sign it. That said, this is the end. That's the end of it all. That's the official end of the Krakoan era books, because even though technically Iron Man wasn't an X title, it may as well have been. It was like an honorary X title, but that said, yeah, Iron Man has been put to bed. We're done with it. It's time to move on. Time to move on. It's time to move on. We're going to be getting something very interesting in terms of Iron Man coming up here very soon. You get to the back of the book, we've already been told what is next for Iron Man. I believe it's coming up in October. We'll be getting the relaunch of Iron Man. I don't know if I'll be doing any videos for it, but I'm pretty sure I'll be talking about it on some level. But basically, we're going to be getting Spencer Ackerman and Julius Oda, who are going to be taking over the book. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it is just going to be called Iron Man. It's not going to be Invincible Iron Man. We're going back to adjectiveless Iron Man. So we'll have to wait around and see what happens. You guessed it, obligatory channel outro time. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider doing so. Clicking that subscribe button and tapping that notification bell ensures that you get more videos just like this one, and you don't miss any of my other content that I drop throughout the week, plus my live streams every Thursday and Saturday. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you click that like button, keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.